It's a kaleidoscopic phantasmagoria.
So it was a big hit at the Cannes Film Festival, and now it's in theaters, or will be as of Friday. Brett Morgen's Moonage Daydream, a documentary, quote unquote, about David Bowie. It's more of a fantasia, perhaps. I don't know. Tell us about it, Christy.
And how about the shoes? Are those men's shoes or women's shoes or bisexual shoes? They're shoes, silly.
We're freaking out in a Moonage Daydream. It can't be a straightforward movie about David Bowie. So this is written, directed by, edited by, produced by Brett Morgen, and he spent the last 5 years putting it together. I mean, 18 months alone just on the visual effects, all of the like trippy kind of kaleidoscopic, colorful stuff that you see in between this, hours and hours of never before seen footage and performances and his artwork and all of that. This is famously the only movie that Bowie's estate has approved of.
Yes.
And they turned over, like, what was it, 5 million pieces of material to Brett Morgen. It was a lot. And so this is why it took so long to cull through it. And the result is this 2-hour, 15-minute long, it's a journey. And it's not in any way a documentary like you think of when you think of a documentary about a musician. And you and I have talked about so many of them here on the show, and when they are out there with the blessing of and the support of either the artist himself or herself or their estate, usually it is like a very worshipful kind of superficial thing. This is worshipful of Bowie, but in a really interesting way, in a way that's constantly challenging you, in a way that is a blast, that is strange and very befitting the artist himself and his constant need to reinvent himself. So yeah, it's a lot of his music. It's performances of songs that you have seen a million times or heard a million times, but they feel totally fresh within this context because maybe it's a concert you've never seen before. It's a version of it you've never heard before. And although it is not traditional in any way as far as shining a light on his career or what inspired him, I found his just musings more illuminating than we usually get from this kind of film, right? It's him talking about the need to make himself uncomfortable to inspire his creativity. I love there's this whole section where he moves to LA because he hates LA and he figures that like that discomfort will be fertile for him. Like that's interesting to me. And interviewers have tried to pin him down for decades and get him to explain himself. And he's playful and he's coy. But in these moments that we have here, maybe we have a bit more of an understanding of what moved somebody who was simultaneously so pervasive and yet also elusive.
Definitely, you're right. It doesn't fit into the traditional documentary mold. I mean, at times it's almost sort of like when a Cirque du Soleil does a show that is themed on like the Beatles or Michael Jackson or whatever. Yeah. It's like you're just experiencing this thing. And the one through line is it's all Bowie. It's all Bowie. It's all Bowie's music. It's all his life. It's all his looks. It's his impact on the culture. Will you leave with questions? Yes. This is not in any way kind of a comprehensive sort of, explanation or even just like citation of what he was about. It is more just kind of like putting you in this mind space of the sort of swirling eddies of Bowie's career and what he went after and what he tried to do. And so like part of me was like, oh, well, I wish they talked about, but ultimately that's not the point of it. And I think it, and on that level, it does maybe suffer a little by comparison to some recent films. Like I think Alex Winter's Zappa doc, which was also the family like opened up the archives, like go for it, do something with this. Todd Haynes' The Velvet Underground, I think, which is a movie that we didn't get talked about enough. I think, I don't know if it was because it was an Apple TV thing and didn't get a lot of theatrical, but like that was a movie that I felt really was immersive, but also explanatory. But as immersive experiences go, even if it's not explanatory, I would say this one is certainly worth having and worth seeing as big and as loud as you can. Maybe not as loud, but like with the best sound system that you can. I got to see it at Dolby, which really, I think, kind of gives you that sort of tangible sense of the music and all this stuff. And so, it is exquisitely crafted. If you're a Bowie fan, you will be in Nirvana. And I think that this is very much a theatrical experience if you can make that happen.
Absolutely. I saw it last night at supposedly the screening room where they mastered it at Raleigh. Supposedly that's where they did it. And so the guy who showed it to us was like, okay, we're going to play it for you really loud the way it was intended. If that bothers you, you may want to sit in the back. And truly you could feel like the rumbling, and it felt so good. Like that was a blast to be a part of it. Simultaneously, within like telling Bowie's story and what influenced him and all of his changes, you have other pieces of pop culture that like are evocative of what he was going for at various points in his life. So whether it's like Nosferatu or The Wizard of Oz or like 2001, like it's part of a mood. And so maybe it feels like a random stream of consciousness kind of thing, but the end
there's
result
context,
cohesive, right? For sure. Here's a question I have for you. Part of what we talk about here in this film is how Bowie was so much more than a musician and even more than an actor, and it's not nearly enough Labyrinth for my liking. I need more Jareth the Goblin King. But also how much he played with like production, like film production, television, cinematography. And nowhere in here do we even hear the name Duncan Jones. Like the fact that his own son would go on to pursue that, which was clearly so dear to him, felt weird, especially when you see Iman eventually. Like I get that it's like this weird kaleidoscopic kind of idea, this gauzy idea of Bowie, and then Iman like brings it back down to earth, like, oh, he is a human being who had a relationship. So if you're gonna go to Iman, like bring in Duncan Jones.
Yeah, that was one of the things that did strike me, like, oh, so the first marriage is just didn't ever happen. Okay.
But he talks about his bisexuality quite a bit, and not in a way that's like playful or coy. It's like,
no.
Yeah,
and doing it at a time that was like genuinely revolutionary.
Sure.
Like he's on British TV in like 1971 talking about this stuff. And it's like, that's huge. Everybody's going to come out of this like, oh, I thought there would be more Just a Gigolo. Yeah. Like there's something, like that they kind of skate over. But again, this isn't a movie that's trying to connect any dots. It's trying to cover all the bases. It is really just this sort of experience.
Yeah.
And so some things do get the attention that maybe you hope that they do, and others won't. But I think you still come away with this, if not the complete picture, with so many of the facets all addressed, I guess.
Yeah. It gets a little repetitive toward the end is one thing I will say.
A touch, yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. And watching a movie about Bowie brought to mind how many movies have used David Bowie songs so effectively. When I was getting ready to come see you today, I was playing like the Apple playlist on David Bowie, and every song that came up, it was like, oh, Golden Years, that's Heath Ledger dancing in A Knight's Tale, and Modern Love, that's Greta Gerwig dancing down the street in Frances Ha. So a question I want to pose to all you guys, let us know down in the comments, what do you think is the best use of a David Bowie song in a movie? Because there are so many. Like they played Starman over the credits, and I'm thinking of like Dewey Cox doing his cheesy Variety Hour version of it. There's a Starman.
No, you're right. There's a million things to pick from.
Anyway, so if you see this, have fun. Let us know what you think about it. My number is a 7.8.
I said 8. I think this is an achievement, even if it's not going to be all things to all people. You've seen something once you've seen this thing.